Dare to walk the Las Vegas Strip in 2025 and an unnerving silence will greet you. The once thrumming crowds have thinned to a whisper, the sidewalks echoing with an eerie emptiness. The very soul of America's playground is being extinguished, and the cold, hard numbers are a brutal confirmation. Vegas has hemorrhaged more than 2 million visitors this year, the most catastrophic decline since the world itself shut down. But here's the sickening twist in this tragic tale. Global tourism isn't just surviving, it's exploding. Mexico, Canada, Europe, and Asia are all boasting unprecedented booms. Meanwhile, Las Vegas is desperately struggling to fill its gilded rooms. So what went so catastrophically wrong? How did the city that built an empire on spectacle and sin suddenly become a ghost town? Some will point the finger at Canada's economic collapse, where a crippled currency and toxic politics have poisoned the well for once loyal visitors. Others will blame the sheer chaos and fear surrounding America's outrageous new $250 visa integrity fee, a charge most tourists will never face, but a threat that has scared them away nonetheless. And then there's the more sinister truth. The Strip itself has declared war on the average American, burying them under an avalanche of endless resort fees, extortionate parking charges, and grotesquely inflated costs. But the real story is far bigger than Vegas. It's a chilling warning about how global travel in 2025 is being violently reshaped, with some nations soaring while America's most iconic playground quietly crumbles into irrelevance. So tonight, our question isn't just who stole 2 million tourists from Vegas. It's what does this alarming global shift, driven by corporate greed, mean for you, the traveler who is now being forced to foot the bill? The first thing we must do is rip away the corporate spin and stare directly into the abyss of the raw numbers. Because when you examine the data, a horrifying picture emerges. It becomes terrifyingly clear that Las Vegas is staring down the barrel of a self-inflicted crisis, a catastrophe not seen since the lockdown years. Since January 2025, the city has plunged nearly 7% in total visitor volume compared to the same period in 2024. That might sound insignificant. At first glance, single digits rarely incite panic. But in a market built on the backs of tens of millions of visitors annually, that number is a death knell. A 7% loss translates into a staggering 2 million missing tourists. That's the entire population of Houston, Texas, wiped from the Strip in an instant. And it gets so much worse when you zoom in on the monthly carnage. In June 2025, Las Vegas suffered an 11.3% free fall year over year, one of the most devastating monthly collapses in its modern history. That single month accounted for a grim 3.11 million visitors, hundreds of thousands fewer souls than the year before. July offered no salvation, and all signs indicate the August numbers will paint the same desolate, apocalyptic picture. Every dip represents a devastating blow to casinos, hotels, and restaurants. But the true cost is measured in human lives. Analysts issue a grim warning. Every 1% decline in visitation viciously rips away thousands of shifts from the hardworking people who are the city's very backbone. But here lies the most infuriating paradox of all. While the human headcount plummets, the casino revenues have not collapsed. How is this possible? Because the customers they have left are being bled dry. Table minimums have been jacked up, hotel rates have become predatory, and the price of a simple meal has skyrocketed. It's a cynical strategy. Even with fewer victims, the Strip can squeeze out record-breaking revenue from each one. On the surface, corporate executives can wave their glossy financial reports and lie, claiming that Vegas is fine. But dig an inch deeper and you uncover the sickening cost. Ordinary Americans are paying obscenely more for drastically less. Meanwhile, international visitors, disgusted by the blatant avarice, are choosing to stay away entirely. This isn't just about numbers, it's a crisis of perception. Back in 2008, when Vegas stared into the abyss, the city fought back. It rolled out fire sale promotions, legendary buffets, 2-for-1 show tickets, and dirt cheap rooms. Today, those lifelines are gone. In their place, the casino giants are betting on a cold, predatory news strategy. Let the total number of tourists collapse, but financially drain every last cent from those who remain. It's a cold-blooded calculation, and for now, it's working to line their pockets. But it also explains why the ghost of 2 million tourists now haunts the Strip, a chilling omen of what's to come. This is more than a statistic. It's a deafening alarm bell, a final warning that the very foundation of Las Vegas tourism, volume and accessibility, is fracturing under the crushing weight of corporate greed. If you truly want to comprehend the scale of this man-made disaster, you must first look north, to Canada. No other country sends more international visitors to the Strip than America's northern neighbor. In any normal year, Canadians are an economic lifeline, injecting more than $3 billion into the city, staying longer and spending thousands on hotels, shows, and casinos. They are the lifeblood of international tourism in Vegas. But in 2025, that lifeblood is draining away at a terrifying speed. The numbers tell a story of absolute horror. In just the first half of 2025, Canadian arrivals to Las Vegas plummeted by a shocking 15%. And in June alone, the situation became a bloodbath. Flights between Canada and Las Vegas didn't just dip, they nosedived by nearly 1/3, a catastrophic collapse that has left airlines slashing routes and casinos staring into the abyss of empty hotel blocks they foolishly assumed would always be full. For a city already bleeding millions of visitors, the hemorrhaging of its most vital market is a catastrophic blow. So why have Canadians turned their backs? A huge part of this disaster is brutally simple economics. The Canadian dollar has been crippled, languishing pathetically below its US counterpart, meaning every single Canadian crossing the border watches their vacation fund evaporate into thin air. Compounding this misery are the specters of soaring unemployment, widespread layoffs, and a housing crisis spiraling out of control in cities like Toronto and Vancouver. And suddenly, a trip to Vegas transforms from a dream getaway into an unthinkable extravagance. Just imagine the bitter pill of converting 2,000 of your hard-earned Canadian dollars into a meager 1,400, and then being forced to stretch that pathetic sum across the crushing costs of airfare, hotels, gambling, and entertainment. For the average family, the numbers are no longer just tight, they're a cruel joke. But this isn't just about empty wallets. It's about poisoned politics and shattered perceptions, a wound that opened the moment Donald Trump declared war on Justin Trudeau, and continued that assault against his successor, Mark Carney, leaving Canadians deeply distrustful of America. Trump's toxic rhetoric about Canada becoming the 51st state was a national insult, igniting a firestorm of protest and furious nationalist backlash. Carney, seizing on that festering resentment, roared back with a defiant vow that Canada would never be bullied into submission by Washington. The catastrophic result is a deep, abiding bitterness. For countless Canadians, a trip to the US now feels less like a holiday and more like a betrayal, endorsing a toxic relationship built on disrespect. And that impact is hitting the Strip like a wrecking ball. Terrified industry experts are now warning that if this Canadian exodus continues its terrifying downward spiral, Vegas is staring down the barrel of losing the equivalent of 15,000 full-time jobs. Not from a single casino collapse, but from a slow, agonizing death by 1,000 cuts, as fewer tourists mean vanished shifts for servers, disappearing tips for dealers, and canceled gigs for entertainers. In a city where countless families teeter on the edge of financial ruin, this catastrophic decline is nothing short of devastating. And yet, the madness continues. The twisted irony is that Canadians still harbor a deep affection for Vegas. The bitter truth is, ask anyone north of the border, and they'll confess it's one of their most cherished international escapes. The flights are tantalizingly short, the winters brutally long, and Vegas has always been the glittering promise of an excitement they crave. But raw affection is no match for cold hard math, and it cannot wash away the stain of deep-seated resentment. In 2025, Canadians are delivering a brutal lesson. Loyalty is not unconditional. When the price becomes too high and the politics too toxic, even the most devoted visitors will abandon you. So when we confront the terrifying reality of 2 million missing visitors, the ghost of Canada's absence haunts every empty corridor. This is about far more than just vacant casino floors. It's a chilling cautionary tale about the mortal danger of depending so blindly on a single international lifeline. And make no mistake, if this Canadian shockwave continues to reverberate, Vegas is on a collision course with a lesson it will learn in the most brutal way possible. But beyond the toxic blend of economics and politics, another insidious force is repelling international travelers. Raw, unadulterated fear and confusion. In 2025, no single government act has unleashed more global panic than the disastrous visa integrity fee, a staggering $250 penalty slapped onto US visa applications. Now, on paper, this fee is supposed to target only travelers from nations already burdened with visa requirements. If you happen to be from one of the 43 privileged nations in the visa waiver program, places like the UK, Germany, France, or Japan, you are completely immune. You won't pay a single dime. But in the age of outrage, perception isn't just reality. It's a weapon. The headlines explode across the globe. America now demands $250 just to enter. That's the only message that cuts through the noise. On social media, any semblance of nuance is instantly annihilated. Families in London, Paris, and Sydney see that toxic number, $250, and immediately calculate that their dream vacation has just been slapped with a $1,000 penalty for their family of 4. For millions, that is the final straw. Why on earth would they hemorrhage thousands on a Vegas trip when Europe, Mexico, or Asia are welcoming them with open arms, and without the exorbitant price tag? The damage is so profound, even the city's own titans are sounding the alarm. Bill Hornbuckle, the CEO of MGM Resorts, stated the horrifyingly obvious: a family of 4 is not going to tolerate spending an extra $1,000 just for the privilege of crossing the border. He knows the devastating truth. Even if his customers never pay the fee, the poisonous rumor alone is enough to drive them away for good. And in a business built entirely on perception and desire, that viral lie is infinitely more destructive than the bungled policy itself. But this goes beyond one fee. It speaks to a chilling and hostile new climate. Horror stories are now circulating of innocent travelers being detained at airports, inexplicably denied entry, or ensnared in a bureaucratic nightmare that transforms their dream trip into a living hell. One viral story of a tourist imprisoned for days is all it takes for thousands more to decide the risk is simply too great. When you combine that with the toxic $250 narrative, the United States starts to look less unwelcoming and more openly hostile. A menacing fortress compared to destinations that are practically begging for their business. And Las Vegas, tragically, is a helpless casualty, caught in the crossfire of a catastrophic policy it had no hand in creating. But it's now paying the price as travelers decide a trip to the US is either a wallet-draining nightmare or a bureaucratic ordeal. And make no mistake, Vegas's very lifeblood is international tourism, a colossal $13 billion annual injection. And when even a sliver of that stream falters, the entire system hemorrhages. So when the whispers start about 2 million vanished tourists, that visa integrity fee casts a long dark shadow, not because of the trivial cost, but because it poisons the well with doubt. And in the world of travel, doubt is a terminal illness. The moment a traveler hesitates, they bolt for the easiest escape route. They'll stay home, explore their own backyard, or simply take their money to another country. The Strip might be glittering with the same old promises, but for a growing legion of potential visitors in 2025, that light feels impossibly distant. And if millions of people simply vanished from Las Vegas in 2025, they didn't just evaporate. They went somewhere else. And that's the horrifying truth. Global tourism didn't die. It just changed its address. The very same crowds that once choked the Vegas Strip are now creating unprecedented booms in rival destinations. To put it bluntly, while Vegas was left to bleed out, the rest of the world was throwing a party. Take Canada, for instance. Rather than making the pilgrimage to Nevada, Canadians decided to keep their money at home. Domestic travel within Canada exploded by nearly 30%, with a flood of cash pouring into cities like Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. Suddenly, resorts in the Rockies were boasting their most profitable seasons in a decade, and festivals nationwide were swamped with record-breaking crowds. For the average Canadian family, the choice became brutally simple. Why wrestle with punishing exchange rates and bureaucratic border nightmares when a better, cheaper vacation is right here? Every dollar Vegas bled, Canada absorbed. And then there's the giant to the south, Mexico. If one nation became the triumphant symbol of this global tourism shift, it was Mexico. In July of 2025 alone, international arrivals skyrocketed by a staggering 12.3% year over year, with more than 8.4 million visitors descending upon its beaches and cities. This wasn't a recovery, it was a goddamn tsunami of tourism. And the bitter pill to swallow? A huge number of them used to split their vacations between the US and Mexico. Now they're cutting the US out of the picture entirely, flocking instead to Cancun, Tulum, or Mexico City. The lure? Dirt cheap flight, hassle-free entry, and a culture that actually seemed to want them there. All of it conspired to siphon away the very tourists Vegas took for granted. And across the Atlantic, in Europe, the narrative is just as damning. Forget the transatlantic ordeal. Europeans en masse chose to stay put, opting for lavish staycations or quick, easy trips across the continent. With high-speed trains and bargain airlines at their beck and call, it's become laughably simple for someone in London to be sipping wine in Paris or enjoying tapas in Barcelona by evening. Families were saving thousands of dollars by simply refusing to play the long-haul game. And the numbers tell the brutal truth. Domestic and intra-European travel went through the roof all through 2025. For Europeans, it wasn't a conscious rejection of Vegas, or so they'd say. It was about cold, hard logic. Why burn thousands of euros to cross an ocean when superior world-class experiences are just a short flight away? Now, turn your eyes to Asia, which was in the grips of a bizarre economic schizophrenia. On one side, you had the burgeoning middle class from Japan, South Korea, and Southeast Asia who were wisely keeping their money within the region, discovering their own national treasures or hopping to neighboring countries. But on the other, the super elite, the high-rolling baccarat whales from China and Japan, were still descending on Vegas. For this rarefied breed, trivialities like a weak Canadian dollar or new visa fees are utterly meaningless. They're burning through tens, even hundreds of thousands of dollars in a single weekend, and the casinos are practically bowing at their feet to keep the cash flowing. And this creates a deeply unsettling paradox. While the broad base of Asian tourism to Vegas is crumbling, the revenue from a tiny handful of VIP gamblers is skyrocketing. The big picture here is terrifyingly clear. Those 2 million tourists who evaporated from Vegas didn't just crawl into a hole. They staged a mass exodus across the globe, igniting economic firestorms in Canada, Mexico, Europe, and Asia. These places offered the very things Vegas in 2025 tragically could not: value, ease of access, and genuine prestige. For the people living in those countries, this was a godsend. More jobs, booming economies, bustling airports. For Las Vegas, it was a public execution, forced to watch billions of dollars simply get up and walk out the door. And here is the cold, hard, terrifying truth. Once a tourist finds a new love, they rarely return to their old one. That Canadian family that just discovered the majesty of Banff, they're probably never coming back to Vegas. That British couple who realized Barcelona has all the thrill of the Strip without the hassle, they're staying in Europe for good. The tourist who gets a taste of Cancun's vibrant nightlife will likely never waste their money in a Vegas club again. You see, Vegas didn't just lose visitors for a season, it has likely lost them forever. Of course, the officials in Las Vegas and the casino moguls would never dare say this publicly, but the dirty secret is out. They don't need you anymore. Not like they did back in 2008, when the great financial collapse left their gilded hotel rooms hauntingly empty. Vegas once groveled, slashing prices and dangling 2-for-1 buffets, begging for America's forgiveness. But now, in 2025, with millions of tourists vanished into thin air,
The Strip isn't rolling out the red carpet, it's rolling out a shakedown.
they're jacking up rates, inventing new fees, and bleeding every last cent from the few who dare to show up. The question is, why this betrayal? Because the soul of the Strip has been sold. The companies in charge, Caesars Entertainment, MGM Resorts, Las Vegas Sands, are no longer casino operators. They're faceless global behemoths. These are multinational corporations with glittering palaces in Macau and Singapore. For an entity like Las Vegas Sands, LVS, the vast majority of its profits now gush from Asia's booming gambling dens. To them, Vegas is now a quaint side project. A legacy brand, perhaps, but utterly disposable. So when the world stops coming to the Strip, LVS just shrugs and squeezes its high rollers in Macau even harder. Even Caesars Entertainment, a company so mismanaged it was just booted from the S&P 500 index, refuses to lower prices to win you back. Instead, they've declared war on your wallet with this nickel and dime tyranny. $25 cocktails, $50 parking, and so-called resort fees that can inflate your bill by hundreds of dollars. The executives have made a chilling calculation. With fewer tourists, the desperate ones who remain can be forced to pay a king's ransom. And as long as their quarterly reports gleam with revenue growth, Wall Street couldn't care less if the boulevards are ghost towns. This is the horrifying secret Vegas is hiding. The 2 million missing tourists are being replaced by the contents of your bank account. Every outrageous surcharge, every fee buried in the fine print, every price-gouged souvenir is a desperate plug in the massive hole left by the Canadians, the Europeans, and everyone else who wisely stayed home. The Strip isn't fixing its problems like it did in 2008. It's mutating into a monster that devours ordinary travelers to feed its corporate masters. And be warned, the victims aren't just the tourists. The very people who are the lifeblood of this city, the dealers, the servers, the entertainers, they rely on sheer numbers to survive. When the global crowds vanish, so do their shifts, their tips, and their stability. But for the detached executives in their boardrooms, their global empire acts as a comfortable safety net. They feel no pressure to panic because Vegas is no longer their only golden goose. And for you, the traveler, this is a dire warning. The Vegas experience is fundamentally broken. This is no longer the land of the affordable escape and the generous comp. It's a cold, exclusive luxury brand engineered not for the masses, but for a wealthy elite who won't even notice the predatory fees. The irony is sickeningly cruel. The more people abandon Vegas, the more it punishes those who remain loyal. So the next time you wonder why the Strip isn't begging for your business, remember the cold, hard truth. They believe they don't need you. Not when they can bleed you dry while raking in billions from across the ocean. That is the side of Vegas they desperately try to conceal. The side that will make or break your decision to ever return. So what is the final damning verdict? Las Vegas hemorrhaged over 2 million tourists in 2025. Yet the world's appetite for travel never waned. Canada simply kept its citizens close. Mexico was inundated with a flood of new visitors, Europe embraced local escapes, and Asia's travelers chose between lavish staycations and high-stakes gambling trips. In the Strip's response to being abandoned, not a single bargain or promotion. It responded with contempt, higher prices, and more insulting fees, placing a cynical bet that the few loyalists who still show up could be squeezed to cover the massive shortfall. This is the critical piece of the puzzle most people miss. This isn't just the Las Vegas crisis, it's a seismic shift in global travel. The money never vanished, it just fled to places that actually deserved it. And while vibrant destinations across the globe are thriving, Las Vegas is gutting its own identity, transforming from a playground for the people into a sterile fortress for the rich. For the local workers who depend on those crowds, this transformation is a slow, agonizing bleed out. For the average American, it means the promise of Vegas is now an unaffordable lie. The real question is no longer who is responsible for scaring away 2 million tourists from Vegas. The corporate culprits are hiding in plain sight. The truly terrifying question is, will they ever bother to come back? Or has the world finally and wisely moved on? You tell me what you think in the comments. If you held $2,000 in your hand for a vacation this year, would you still gamble it on Las Vegas? Or would you join the millions who are voting with their feet and choosing other destinations? Because the fate of the Strip is not in the hands of those casino executives. It rests in the hands of travelers just like you.